I come from a country that is not as generous as Norway, and that unfortunately has no oil. So it's a bit of a stingy country, and we might see an impact on foreign aid that France is giving and distributing, although not that much, I tend to agree, because it's so minimal anyway that I don't see where they will cut. However, there are discussions already, and some of you are aware of it, that there could be cuts into the funding that France and other governments are doing to multilateral organizations like the Global Fund. And there it might backlash on us as well. Therefore, the need for us to advocate and be close to the Global Fund, close to our governments, to make sure that there are no cuts that will indirectly have an impact on us, on the people we serve, is very important. In Paris so far, we have not seen much of an impact of the crisis. The good one, though, the good one is that half of my board comes from the finance world. And they're all very, very busy now rescuing banks in Iceland or in the Ukraine or in Africa or elsewhere. And they don't call me anymore. So I'm having a very good time. That was a very good month for me. The impact we might see, however, I believe is next year. I think our largest foundations and corporations will lose money. Foundations redistribute wealth, money they got for their interest. They are making less profit, and therefore there will be less redistribution next year. And I think that for fiscal year 10, then there might be an impact. The last thing I want to add is that we depend very much on the generosity of individuals, all of us. In France alone, there are more than 130,000 citizens who support the action of care. And there are millions around the world. Actually, that's our national constituency. That's where our strengths come from. And as long as these people support us, then we will be able to continue. Therefore, the impact of the Christmas appeals, like in any country, from Japan to the US, from Norway to South Africa, most of the money comes in the last days of the year. We're all waiting anxiously on the results of our Christmas appeal, November appeals. And in January, we will know the impact. And then there might be good news or not so good news for our operations. I want to stop on this one and to insist on the importance of these individual donors. This morning we heard the viewpoints of large philanthropists, and that's very important to us, of governments. We heard the appeal of Mama Mungela. I'm very sensitive to the reaction of those millions of people who give 20 euros and 50 euros or dollars. And we are all part of that chain, from our headquarters to you guys and to the people we want to help. And we need them. And that gives us a real strength. A couple of weeks ago, I was visiting I had a meeting with the chief of staff of the mayor of Paris. And the city of Paris has a budget for foreign aid, almost as large as the budget of the French government. Not that much. And I talked to the guy, and I was reporting on programs that we're doing with their help in West Bank, Gaza, in Chad, in Myanmar, in other countries. And after 5 minutes, the guy looks at me and said, and by the way, Philippe, how many donors do you have in Paris? A donor equals a voter. How many donors do you have in Paris? Well, I said, well, we have 30,000 active donors in the city of Paris. 30,000? He said, in the political party of the mayor, we have only 18 active members in the party of the mayor. I said, oui, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. That's us, that's care. I'm sorry for you guys from the political parties, but that gives us the power. 30,000 electors, voters in Paris, 30,000 voters of care. And that's true for Norway, for Austria, for Germany, for Canada, for the US. That gives us a lot of strength. And that we need to cultivate so that we can help you help the people.
I'd like to just talk a little bit, I guess, about the US market. This might be a little bit more of the cold water of reality. Because I do think that we're going to see an impact in the US, and I think we're going to see it very soon. From Save the Children's standpoint, we really haven't seen that impact in October, but we expect we will in November and December. And I think the thing about this economic crisis that is probably different is that when I think about our donors, and I'm sure very similar to CARE's donors, it's an impact that goes from the everyday donor that's giving 20 euros or $28 a month to our highest level donors who have lost 20% of their portfolio. So I do think when people are sitting down to write checks, as they do in the United States in the months of November, December, it is going to be a difficult decision that they're going to make. I think what people will do is, I don't think people will take on new organizations. So, and we've already seen a lot of softness in our acquisition of new people to Save the Children. So I think you can assume that acquisition of new donors is going to be very tough. I think people will continue to give to the organizations that they've given to. They may give lower amounts. So again, I think kind of the average gift amount may be lower. I think corporations, you know, again, from the most part, we haven't seen a big reaction from corporations. But I think actually there's an opportunity here, because this is the time when, as we talked about the other day, you can form these long-lasting partnerships. And organizations, corporations are going to be looking for the things that you can bring to the party, which are not all about money. So I think there's a real opportunity there. And the corporation's response is going to be very much dependent on what happens within their business and how impacted they are. And if people are starting to lay people off, you can assume that things like philanthropy are going to be impacted. It's just, I think, something that I think is very inevitable. So I think from that standpoint, we're going to see it. I think foundations, there's a lag there, because most foundations use some kind of a smoothing formula on their giving, and so you really won't see that impact until later. I think that's another key point, is that I think the real thing we have to think about is what's going to happen 12 months from now. Not what's going to happen in the U.S. in the next 2 months or the next 3 months, but what's going to happen in 12 months. And that has a lot to do with how long this recession goes on. And again, we learned, I think, some lessons from Japan, and we want to obviously stay very positive, but a lot of this depends on the length of the recession. But I think it's important to think 12 months out and think about what's going to happen 12 months from now. And that's one of the things that's key. There's also a lot of data that's available about U.S. giving, and there's some good things in that data. The Chronicle has done a lot of work around what happens with recessions and what happens with giving. And the good news is that it usually comes after an economic dip, and it's usually much shallower than the economic dip. Now, that's been the historical pattern for something like 50 years in the United States. So that's the good news. Different sectors are impacted in different ways. So in international development, it's kind of in the middle. Arts and culture is really impacted in recessions in the U.S. Local organizations are impacted less, and that makes a lot of sense when you think about how donors are going to respond, particularly in the U.S. They're going to give first to local organizations, but international development is kind of in the middle. So I think there's a lot of things we have to think about 12 months from now, and we have to think about what the opportunities are, and I think we'll get to that in a minute. But there certainly is going to be an impact in the U.S., and I think it will not be as deep in other countries. And I did last night survey. I was on a call with our CEOs of Norway, Italy, Sweden, the UK, and primarily they were seeing they really have not seen any impact as of yet. So I think we're similar in seeing that. So far, things are holding up well in Europe and in Scandinavia.